Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the B Team Analytics Podcast, your home for NBA analytics. And what are the two best words in basketball? Game 7. And we have two of them. Not to talk about today because I am recording this on Sunday before the second Game 7, but we at least have one Game 7 to talk about. In conclusion to, a first round that was probably one of the better first rounds in a while, honestly, to think about. And I listen to a lot of podcasts, NBA podcasts, and they've all said about the same thing, so I feel validated in my opinion saying this. This has been one of the better NBA final or NBA first rounds in a while, and that was just fantastic for basketball. And a stat I love bringing up, ESPN actually came out. I don't know if they came out exactly and said it, but they are currently up 11% through, I think it was the first 11 games, I believe. I saw this about halfway through this week. Up 11% viewership on the first round, which is fantastic to see, especially with a lot of the negativity coming out being down 2% on the year on national TV. So definitely excited to see, and we have a lot to talk about today. So with that, I think we're going to keep all the stuff we talk about pretty short today, just because we have a lot to talk about. So we'll hit everything pretty high level and then try to get through it all today. So buckle up, we'll have a good episode here. Okay, before we jump into the news this week, I think we start with everyone's favorite segment, games I'm watching while I record this podcast. And on our beautiful third monitor here, we have the first game of round 2, which is Indiana versus Cleveland. And before I tell you the current score right now, I want to say, this is also going to be my second round preview for this series as well. Cleveland is going to have a run for their money. I'm not just saying this because I currently have it up right now. Before any of this, before the series even started, I said this Indiana team is really good, and I think they match up really well to this Cleveland team. And it's showing because Indiana is currently leading 38-29 on the road against Cleveland. And it's hard to point. I kind of missed the first quarter because I didn't realize it started at 5. I thought it started at 5:30. But just to kind of quickly look at some high-level stats, Indiana shooting 68% from the field, almost 70%. That is hard to beat. And we are 9:20 into the game right now. So definitely there will be some cooling off that will happen, of course. I'm interested to see how long that goes, especially because throughout this entire year, Cleveland's defense has really been what's carried the team. So to see, Indiana coming out blistering hot like this is definitely something that really wasn't on the radar for everyone. But I'm interested to see, A, if their defense can kind of turn around, and B, if Indiana could keep this up. They obviously can't. There's no way they finish the game shooting nearly 60%, nearly 70%. So definitely interested in seeing. I think recap-wise, I think this may be a 6-game series. It's hard to say because we're only a quarter and a half into the game right now, but I gotta lean towards Cleveland on this one, and you've seen my history of picking so far, so I'm very intrigued to see if my cold streak continues here. But I think Cleveland's defense is going to win this game. And Indiana is a really quick team. I think they've had one of the fastest paced teams so far in the season. So it'd be interesting to see if Cleveland's defense can kind of keep up with that. Can their transition defense really, propel them to a win here? Would be kind of what I think it would be the make or break to this kind of series. But at the end of the day, I think, defense wins championships. And I think if this Cleveland defense can turn on like I know they can, this is going to be easy for them. Obviously, Indiana's going to sneak a couple games in there. I think they'll probably get Two at home. If they can win this and two at home, I mean, that's a fantastic series for them right there. But definitely interesting to see how this plays out, especially with just going the timeout 45-35 to Indiana on the road. So definitely interesting to see. Moving right along, we'll just quickly touch on some NBA news here. Greg Popovich has officially retired from coaching and is officially moving into a team president role with the San Antonio Spurs. Definitely interesting. I say definitely interesting a lot. I probably should cut that out, but definitely an interesting move from him. As in his press conference, he stated, like, yeah, he's a grandpa first. He wants to be around his kids, and especially with kind of the health concerns he has now, I think this more, I wouldn't say reduced role, but, less physical sort of role with the traveling and all that will be really good for him. And we've seen it in the past. Obviously, Brad Stevens did the same thing, is killing it at team president. I believe in the past, Greg Popovich has also been a general manager, team principal as well. So it's not like this is the first time he's doing this, but definitely good move for him. I wouldn't say the writing was on the wall, but definitely I think everyone kind of saw this sort of retirement coming towards the end of the season. Filling his place was the interim head coach for the year. Mitchell Johnson is filling the role for him. Great move. By this point, especially in the NBA, if you're promoted to an interim head coach halfway through the season, you're most likely going to get the full-time job sort of thing. So, definitely a good move. Another Greg Popovich guy. And with Greg Popovich still in the organization, I think this is definitely a good learning opportunity for him. Just to kind of, get his foot in the door, get some coaching experience. He has a really great team behind him with Wemby and Fox, some of those guys. I think Chris Paul's, from what I've heard, coming back. I think he's turning 41 next year, so definitely a long haul career, but I'm interested to see if he comes back next year. No word on if he's retiring or not. But fun to see kind of a coaching change in this Spurs organization and see, how Mitchell Johnson kind of fills this role. With that good team, can he bring what, Wemby needs? I have to assume this is still going to be a very Greg Popovich sort of identity offense, especially just because he came up in this Greg Popovich sort of system. So definitely good storyline for next season. Next up, let's get to the playoffs here. We'll start, before everyone starts tuning off, we'll start with the Game 7s here. The Los Angeles Clippers, Denver Nuggets, I think when we finished last time, I believe, if my memory mistakes me, we just finished up Game 4. The series was 2-2 going into it. During this week, obviously Game 7, Denver took a really commanding 31-151 win in Denver to win that series. Game 6, the Clippers won at home, and then Denver finished it off 120-111 at home. A couple keys that came out of this, I think Denver, and it's weird to say, if Russell Westbrook is playing good, this team, I wouldn't say looks unstoppable, but it gives them an edge that I didn't think would be possible. And it really showed in Game 7. Russell Westbrook had a really good game, finishing the night with 16 points, 5 rebounds, 5 assists, 5 steals. So that is, through and through a fantastic stat line. Really gave him the motivation, gave him the energy kind of coming off the bench that really helped him propel them to the win in this game. This was kind of a beatdown sort of game through and through for Denver, and it really kind of started with Westbrook coming off the bench. They had a really big third quarter coming out, 35-19 in the third quarter, to really kind of propel them to that win. They obviously kind of closed the gap a little bit in that fourth, but by that point it was just bench guys kind of going back and forth through it. So For the Clippers, this is a weird team for me because I don't watch them too often, so I don't have a really good grasp on what they really need to change this offseason. I think in the playoffs, James Harden had an absolute dud out there. 7 points, 5 rebounds, 13 assists for the night. I think you need more scoring out of Harden. I think if Harden's going to be this inconsistent, you may need to bring kind of a second option into the fold because, you have, a lot of third, fourth option scoring. Derrick Jones Jr., Zubrick out there as well. You need something to kind of offset, an off night from James Harden because, Kawhi Leonard, did his thing, 22 points, 5 rebounds, 2 steals, assists, really, really showing that he is the leader of this team. So, definitely interesting. There it is again. I said interesting again. Definitely interesting to see, next season what this team does. I think one thing I really want to note about this team is their ownership. Steve Ballmer absolutely turned this franchise around. Just bringing the fans back into it is something I really love seeing because that's something that, European basketball has so far over us. And I really think, ownership needs to start taking a fan-first approach. And Steve Ballmer is killing that right now. He's, built a new stadium for the team. He's, showing that he cares the team's success. He built the wall, which came out is statistically proven that the team's free throws, the opponent team free throw shooting has actually gone down when shooting against the wall. He, as well, for this Game 7, and obviously it didn't help too much, he flew out members of the wall. He flew out, I think how many was it? It was 50. Bought all the tickets, bought all the flights, flew him out to Denver to have a makeshift wall on that side of the court. And I think that is fantastic for him to do, sort of thing. And it just shows that, and especially, in a very saturated LA market with the Lakers, who's, dominated for years, he's really, I wouldn't say turning the tides, but, making a foothold into that, fan base. And I really, really love seeing that. So I think for them, that is a massive plus going forward. If you can maybe round out with maybe another shooter, I would say maybe a mid-level shooter potentially could be a good move for them. I think this team is, set for the future, sort of thing. So with that, Denver's moving on. They play the Thunder next week, or tomorrow, actually. They're after the Celtics. Go Celtics. They're after the Celtics game tomorrow, so very short turnaround. You can't count out Jokic. This would be an MVP battle. I think, the Thunder are great, basically 1 through 9. And I think that's going to catch up with Denver pretty quick because that bench is not very good. So I think that's going to be the difference, is how that bench plays for Oklahoma City. If that bench outplays the Denver bench, I think this is going to be, hard to say, maybe a 5 game. I think Denver's definitely going to win a game in this series. I don't think they get more than that. So I'm going to say probably a pretty easy Thunder in 5. I think they'll make it competitive. They'll do a much better job than Memphis. But I still think Oklahoma City is going to, run through it pretty easily. So that is for that series right there. We will now, I'm going to touch on this super quickly because we've talked a lot about both these teams. Minnesota versus the Los Angeles Lakers. Obviously, the Lakers did lose. They made it, pretty competitive. Games 4 and 5 were really competitive games. Obviously, Minnesota ended up taking it home. 116 victory. And then a 103 closeout game on the road, which was a fantastic game. I think by this point, this podcast has just become an apology podcast to the Minnesota Timberwolves. Last episode, I basically said Rudy Gobert was an absolute liability on the floor and should just be benched for the rest of the playoffs. Turns out, he had to be listening to my podcast. He had to be, because he decided to take it personally. And let me pull up his stat line here because it is hilarious. He heard the podcast and was like, "No, I'm not a liability." Scored 27 points, which led the team, and had 24 rebounds. He remembered, I don't know if he just, was in the shower one night and was like, "Oh my God, I'm 7'2", I'm taller than everyone on Los Angeles, I can grab rebounds again," and had a great game. I don't know what changed in his mind, but he came out and had a fantastic game for Minnesota, and that really propelled him to this closeout game because Los Angeles was just struggling on the boards tonight. Gobert alone had 9 offensive rebounds that compared to 8 total for Los Angeles. So he even out-rebounded. Total rebounds, 37 rebounds. Gobert alone, 24. So, that was the difference maker in this game. And, we've talked a lot about Los Angeles, so I won't dive into it too much, but they need a center. They need a center to even remotely be competent in a playoff situation. And Gobert showed it. If you get a tall dude who knows he's tall, he's going to out-rebound you 100% of the time. I think that's all I'm going to touch on this series. Minnesota plays the winner of the next series we'll talk about. I believe that would start Tuesday, I believe. So we'll see how... We'll talk about the next series next. Alrighty, final Western Conference series I want to touch on, and obviously... I couldn't get this Game 7 in. They do play tomorrow on Monday. Obviously, the Celtics play tomorrow, which means I would have to record on Tuesday, and it would just be, a late pod. I was just like, we'll just touch on what happened, and then we'll get what happens next episode. So, obviously, through 6 games, it is tied 3-3. When we last left off, Golden State, I believe, just won Game 3, 104-93, if I'm unmistaken. Game 4 was another Golden State game, so they went up 3-1 in this series. Really good Game 4. The game ended just kind of on a back and forth. Here we'll start. Jimmy Butler was fouled on a 3-point attempt, kind of one of those step-in sort of fouls. Just a common foul, no flagrant, but did sink all 3 free throws. Really turned the game. That was that made it 107-104. Houston came down. Şengün drilled a little 7-footer. I think there was still about 40 seconds left in the game, so just, quick bucket, wanted to get something on the board. They came down, they did miss, or Butler did miss a little 2-point jumper, and then ultimately rebounded by Houston. They came down, missed another 2-pointer to go up. Butler hit another 2 free throws on the other end, and then Van Fleet had a pretty good look at it, but did miss a 3-pointer at the end to win the game. Overall, it was a pretty exciting game. Jimmy Butler has been kind of the difference maker, especially down the end for a lot of these games. He still has it. He still has it. 35 years old, still playing fantastic. Playoff Jimmy is still a thing. Finished the night with 37 points, 27 points. Leading scorer of the team, Brendan Pizzinski, also had a fantastic game with 26. Curry had a little bit less of a role with only 17, but, through and through, fantastic play by the guy sort of thing. So, definitely good there. But, obviously, now that's a Game 7, Golden State did choke a 3-1 lead. So, Houston just kind of ran away with Game 5. This was a Jalen Green kind of game. This was the Amen Thompson game. There we go. I'm getting my game straight now. Amen Thompson with 25 points, Fred VanVleet with 26, and Dylan Brooks with 24. So, through and through, they just had the game. They had the game they needed, sort of thing. Came out, really killed it. Or Golden State just couldn't get anything going. I don't know if it was a little bit of a hangover from the Game 4 win. I think, did they let off the pedal a little bit? Maybe, but, overall just kind of a weak showing for the team, sort of thing. So same thing, game 6, 115-107. This was a little bit closer. Still same thing, even on the 4-factor side, they won every single category. Just, Golden State just couldn't get it going. A lot of that kind of spurred from the bench. Draymond, Gary Payton, Buddy Hield had a combined total of, 13 points. Jimmy Butler and Curry combined, 29 and 27 respectively. So, just not a lot of production from the other guys. And that's really what they needed in this series, a lot of production top to bottom. And they're just not getting that. I don't know if this series has basically been a 7-round heavyweight title fight, and I mean that in the actual fighting sense. This series just felt like there was better fighting than UFC 314 had, sort of thing. So definitely an interesting series, just because it's kind of more of a will of attrition kind of series for this physicality, and it's not even like good physicality like kind of the Celtics and Magic series was. This is just pure like utter physicality sort of thing. So definitely interesting to see. You do have your star players a little bit on the older side. Jimmy 35, Curry is 36. I say that very hesitantly as I'm checking. 37, I was a year off. You're relying on, older superstars to perform, and you really need your bench to step up. They do have, and especially now, you have the 3-1, but you're also on the road in Houston for this game as well. So definitely, home court advantage. You really need to kind of, find something, because at the end of the day, you had this series more or less wrapped up after game 4, and you just let the foot off the pedal. And, now you have, game 7 on the road in Houston. It's hard to get that momentum back, especially in the NBA. So definitely interesting. I'm just going to keep saying, definitely interesting to see how this plays out. Obviously, I wanted to get this in this game 7 this episode, but we'll talk more about that next episode. With all that, now let's turn to the New York Knicks Detroit Pistons series. This wrapped up 4-2, and off of a really, really good. Detroit is a very, very fun team, I must say. The 2 games they won were both on the road. They couldn't win a single game at home for some reason, which baffled my mind. New York won 3 and 4, and then as well as game 6 on the road. And both times it just kind of looked like an experience. I think New York obviously has a lot more playoff pedigree under their belt than this Detroit team. First playoff appearance since I think it was 2010, something crazy like that. And just a lot of these games, 116, 113, that was just kind of a blown game from Detroit's side. A lot of stupid mistakes coming down the stretch. They did have a really good 106-103 win on game 5. They really kept everything together, kept it pretty tight. No stupid mistakes down the end. They just played fantastic basketball down the stretch on the road as well. So definitely interesting to see there. I wanted to take a little bit more time to talk about this Detroit team, because I think they are really, really set up to be positioned very well right now. They did lose in, I wouldn't say embarrassing fashion, but they left a lot on the table. A lot of this series was, hey, Detroit has this in the bag, and then just kind of choked it away multiple times. And that just comes with experience. And I don't know if this team really needs any crazy overhaul in the lineup. I think obviously you have your center as Cade Cunningham. You have guys like, Mikal Beasley out there. Asar Thompson, who played amazing. Both the Thompson twins are playing great in these playoffs so far. You have, veteran presence out there with Tobias Harris, Tim Hardaway Jr., Dennis Schroeder. I don't know if he's going to stick around for this year. But you have a lot of good pieces in there. I think what would help is maybe round out the bench a little bit more, get some more experience coming off the bench. I know right now I believe Schroeder is coming off the bench. Maybe get you another experienced veteran kind of guy coming off that bench to really kind of help smooth or weather the storm that a lot of the time you saw during these stretches in these Detroit games, to help kind of weather that storm. And I think that's really what they need. Just more experience, more playing together. And I think Cade Cunningham, he's only in his third year leading a team to the playoffs. Give him another year of experience under his belt. I think he comes back even better next season, sort of thing. So I think this is definitely, this Detroit team, if they can stick this team together, has a future. They have a really good future. Add a couple more really good pieces in the offseason. I think you can see this team, upper half of the playoffs next season. And along with the next team we'll talk about, I think these younger teams have a lot more of a foothold in the league because they are cheaper teams with the new CBA. So definitely a fun little team to look at in the future, sort of thing. And the final series I want to talk about here is the Boston Celtics, go C's, against the Orlando Magic. I'm not going to touch too much on the series as a whole. I want to touch a little bit more on this Orlando team because they really, really, really gave this Celtics team a run for the money. Of course, the difference between the two, I think Celtics just had a lot more experience. I think that's what it came down to. Orlando tried to make it a physical series, and the Celtics kind of stepped up to it. The Celtics team is very versatile. They can really switch how you play them. And throughout the last two games of the series, the Celtics only made, 9 and 10 three-pointers. So a completely different identity team than what they were playing in the regular season. And they still won these games. So definitely interesting to see for the Celtics team, because they can change how they play. Can they get that, identity of three-point shooting back? Or, has other teams seen the formula and may play it better than the Magic, sort of thing. So something to look out for going forward. Turning now to this Orlando team, I think they have a very, very similar case to what Detroit had, but they're a little bit better off, mainly because of injuries. Because by and far, this is the best defense I've seen in the NBA so far this year. I think Cleveland may have a run for that defensive spot as well, but this is one of the best defense I've seen all year. And defense wins championships. The problem they had was really offensively. And a lot of that really boils down to, a couple injuries, I think, that really kind of hurt them into the playoffs. Both Jalen Suggs and Franz Wagner were hurt, and those two were really kind of the backbone of their scoring production most of the season. And of course, Franz Wagner also had a really, really good... Franz Wagner and Pablo Banchero were scoring out of their minds this series, and they needed to, sort of thing. But it wasn't enough to get past, a Celtics team who are one of the most efficient offenses in the league right now. But overall, I think this team's really, really set up. I don't think they need any major pieces on this team. I think this is a very well-constructed team. I think you can upgrade, a couple spots here and there, but even then, if, Jalen Suggs comes back, you can move Corey Joseph, maybe Cole Anthony to that second spot coming off the bench. You have Gary Harris, Caldwell Pope out there as your 2. You have Franz Wagner, who can back up Pablo coming off that, small forward sort of area. You can push Pablo to the 4 spot if you need. Jonathan Isaac's also there. You have Franz Wagner up there as well. So this team's really well constructed. They just, have to stay healthy into the playoffs. And I think this team will be really, really good next year, sort of thing. So overall, this is another team I want to really look out for next year, because they could also be up there fighting for, 4th, 5th spot with Detroit next year. Because this team's really set up very well. And especially in the start of the season, Pablo Banchero was hurt. Franz Wagner was also hurt for a little bit. So if they can just stay healthy throughout an entire season, I think they can be fighting for upper half of next season, or upper half of the East next season, sort of thing. So very, very interested to see how this all plays out. But I'm very, very high on this Orlando team. Alrighty, and to wrap up this podcast, maybe a little bit of a shorter episode today, let me just give my second round predictions, because, my first round bracket's pretty well, messed up by this point. So, I think we've kind of rolled through a lot of these. We'll start down at the bottom of the West. So, I think I gotta go Rockets win the game. They move on to play the Timberwolves after winning Game 7 against the Warriors. I have to say, just so I don't have to apologize to the Timberwolves anymore, I have to go Timberwolves in 6. I think that's good because, Anthony Edwards is kind of on fire right now. I think this is another series where if, Rudy Gobert can remember he's 7'2" and taller than everyone on the Rockets, I think he could play really well. Timberwolves also have, guys 1 through 8 who can match up really well against this Rockets team. So I think this is going to be a very, very, very good series for the Timberwolves. Moving to the top, I think Thunder take this. I think we talked about it before. I think Thunder are just better on their bench. If the bench can perform very well, I think this is going to be a very easy series for them. I'm going to say Thunder in 5. Moving to the East, Cleveland Pacers. As an update, Indiana is still winning 72-66. I still don't think that changes my opinion. I think Cleveland could pull this out. I think they'll make it pretty hard on themselves. So I got to go Cleveland in 5. 6. Cleveland in 6 on this one. I think this is going to be another really good second round. So Cleveland in 6. Down the other side, and this is going to come off as Celtics bias. It definitely will. Knicks, Celtics. The Knicks lost all 4 matchups against the Celtics this year in, awful fashion. I think they were blowouts every single time. And I think that continues here. I think this is an easy Celtics in 5 because the Celtics just love to drop a game every once in a while. I think this is an easy Celtics in 5. So I won't predict the conference finals and the playoffs because I know I'll probably get half of these wrong. But that leads to a Thunder Timberwolves Cleveland Celtics finals, which, everyone kind of expected more or less. So with all that being said, this will be a shorter podcast. Now I'm trying out, lengthwise here how this works, but shorter podcast. I really hope you enjoyed watching this episode, and till next week, I hope you watch a basketball game.